Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Jonathan Ward.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Lane, and together we're Unlocking Leadership. We are three experienced executive coaches with very different disciplines. In every episode, we take a question from a real client, provide key insights to address their challenges from our three different perspectives. It's a holistic approach to understanding challenges and opportunities. Let's get to it. Our question today is from Patrick in Albuquerque. My friend's mentor has told him that he needs to apply systems thinking to be relevant in the workplace of the future. What does that mean? Jonathan, what would you define and how would you define this for Patrick?
Well, great. That's a wonderful question. And one of the things that I think really is the hallmark of systems thinking is realizing that you're part of a complex system within your organization. From a really simple standpoint, your organization exists to serve a purpose, which is to take some sort of input and turn it into an output. There are stakeholders who own that process. There's customers of that process. There's people who make the work happen. There's the environment in which you operate. And then there's this whole worldview or mindset that talks about the rules and the unspoken assumptions that go on at work. So that's what systems thinking is being aware of all of that kind of things that are, all of those kind of things that are going on. So, what happens sometimes is that mid-level leaders will encounter the complexity of organizational systems when they start interacting with peers from other departments. Because, for example, you might have different stakeholders or customers or the mindset, which can cause friction. For example, if you look at a sales organization and a procurement organization, they have very different ways of looking at the world. And many leaders also don't think of their colleagues in their organizations as being their internal customers. So something that you might do for your own convenience could have unintended negative consequences for other people in the organization who have to work with what your department is doing. So having a systems viewpoint is keeping all of that kind of thing in perspective. Being an effective leader means expanding your viewpoint so that you see yourself in a much broader role than just as an employee or a boss.
Yeah, I always when I'm coaching individuals or organizations, we're all connected, right? Whatever you do in your role or within your vertical or team, it does have a consequence to others within the organization and obviously to clients. And so being aware of that from taking a step back, and I think what we do have to do in systems thinking is really also look at the big picture, not be so siloed into what we're doing, what we're accomplishing with our team, but really looking at, what is the impact with others in the organization and, impact to clients, for instance. There is one question I want to ask you that might be helpful for our audience. So, how would, there's healthy systems thinking and there's unhealthy systems thinking. Do you have any comments on that?
Tell me what would be an example of an unhealthy systems thinking. I'm curious as to what.
I guess, maybe it's just an unhealthy system. Obviously, when leaders or teams are being siloed, when they're not thinking about, say for instance, marketing changes their whole branding, it doesn't think about the impact it's going to have on the sales team because now they don't have, a recognizable brand, they have no legacy behind it, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just trying to think if are there some key components that are defined in a quote healthy system or healthy ecosystem in the work environment that you would say would be the top three things that are recognizable.
Yeah, I guess for me, one of the things that I look at is that systems want to try to stay in equilibrium. If you think about a body system or something like that, you want to preserve the way things are going along right now. And so where we could really see these kinds of dysfunctional things and systems happening is when you bring in a leader who's supposedly empowered to make a change, because the system will then start pushing back on that person unless you're really aware of what the leverage points are. So that's what frequently happens when people are hired into organizations and are supposedly empowered to make changes. If you don't understand the complexities of the different silos within that organization and how those people are looking at the world, you run the risk of being what I like to call encapsulated and rejected, like the body does with an invading organism.
Right.
And so that can really happen in organizations. Somebody comes in thinking they've been given the power to come through and make sweeping changes. And hey, guess what? Unless you know where the leverage points are and who owns the processes and what the viewpoints are, you're likely to get bounced out of there really quickly.
That's true. Yeah. you've got to come in. Go ahead, Sonia.
One of the things I'm really glad that Kimberly started off by giving a little bit of her perspective and asking you a question. Listening to both of you made me think of a client that I worked with for a number of years that was, if you will, in a consistent iteration of systems, because when I first started working with them, they were a mechanical engineering firm, and then they actually merged with an electrical engineering firm. And they had two very different processes and systems for how they went to market. And their clients, the reason the merger was a good idea was their clients were architects and, builders. So there was a familiarity with the client, with what the outcome was, but within each other, they had very different ways about going to their proposals. And so that took about almost, I would say, 2 years with, it was it was a bumpy ride. Is there a way to streamline that, Jonathan? Is there any recommendations you have when there is organizations that are having to bring together two very different systems and approaches to going, to building the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see this a lot when you're doing due diligence for merging organizations frequently now. Not only are you looking at the financials, but there should be some sort of cultural due diligence that's going along as well. If you've got very different organizational cultures, you run the risk of a merger or an acquisition of being a failure. And that's what I would say the majority of the failures in acquisitions is the failure to deal with that kind of cultural systemic approach of things. So looking at how these organizations view the world differently. If you don't have a good match in that regard, or at least some sort of plan for bringing those two together,
right.
Yeah, I think you're in big trouble.
Mm-hmm. That's often overlooked, and it's just the basic to success, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing that I assume would work, I know that this is part of what was working there, was the electrical engineering firm had already been working on trying to change some things in their culture. So I was brought in because I was a coach, and so they were looking to creating more of a coaching culture. And I basically said to them, so here feedback is really important and context is really important. So let's talk about how you guys currently give each other feedback, and how is it that you're able to provide context for people so that everything doesn't have to flow all the way to the top. Because in that particular situation, there was 6 leaders, so they were all principals and owners. And people traditionally had gone to one party or to the other party to get things the way they wanted to, or to be able to say, this is what's going to now happen. And I was going to say, what do you think about that in terms of just techniques or approaches that people can actually insert into the culture?
Yeah, I think again, it's trying to make some of the implicit explicit, because a lot of times there's all these unspoken rules and assumptions and viewpoints of the way we look at the world and what we're supposed to be doing. To me, the biggest thing that I see happening in systems situations all the time is unintended consequences. You have people who are well-intended actors in the system who want to make some sort of change, and they really haven't gone through and done this kind of investigation to find out what other people's viewpoints are. And there may be a very good reason why somebody in another department is doing things this way that you just don't understand. It doesn't look like it makes sense to you, but to them, they understand very clearly why they're doing it. And so I think, again, it goes back to asking really powerful questions and listening very intently to find out what's going on.
You made me think of a question. Is there one part of the system that's most important?
Wow. Important for success. That's an interesting standpoint, I guess. Looking at, I have a hard time saying which one is the most important. I really don't have a good answer for that one right now. But
well, yeah, I didn't know if are they all balanced? I mean, yeah, it just kind of came to me. I was just kind of curious.
It's things manage to, we all manage to get by somehow. Organizations, if they don't have some sort of at least functional system, the organization doesn't last very long. So they do manage to succeed in spite of themselves. And there are all kinds of inefficiencies that are easy for somebody to see when they come in from the outside. Or I guess you think about the times that you've been an employee in a company, and you come into, and you're like, why the heck are they doing things this way? And you talk to people over the course of a couple months, and you find out that there is a rationale for doing it. But
so would there be some way for Patrick, who asked the question, to sort of take baby steps to becoming more knowledgeable in systems, and being able to engage in that kind of practice in the future?
I think one of the things that I do a lot of times with my clients my coaching clients who are moving into mid-level to more senior level positions in an organization is to have them do a stakeholder analysis, is to, really start thinking about who are the key people that I have to interact with, from different departments outside of my own department, whether they're bosses or peers throughout the organization or customers, and really start to think about, what does this person care about? Put yourself in their shoes. And think about what it is that's important for them. And you can make these assumptions, but then you have to do the hard work, which is to go out and have conversations with these people. When you talk about building relationships, it's not just taking Nancy out to lunch. It's taking Nancy out to lunch and understanding what keeps her up at night at work. And that's when you start to get the broader systems perspective. And I think that's a good way to kind of start off.
Yeah, make your sub representation of the ecosystem. So literally, whoever's representative of that vertical or that team or that system, and then, have a powwow, or, have some conversations, and then, kind of build a sub version of that within the ecosystem, just so you can keep a pulse on it and be able to influence that, right, positively.
Yeah. And helping to understand, you've got your own goals and other people have their own goals, and where can you help them? How can they help you? There's lots of opportunities along in that kind of conversation.
Back in the olden days when I was in sales, and I used to sell in manufacturing systems, there used to be the phrase of, well, and then they throw it over, the engineering just throws it over the wall to us. I used to say, well, that must be some big wall. You need to have, you guys need to break down those walls. Well, thank you, Patrick from Albuquerque, for your question today. We hope you, our viewers and listeners, gain new insights on how systems thinking will help you be successful. To our listeners, if you like the content we shared, please like us and like this episode, and also share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We look forward to your reviews. You can also find Unlocking Leadership-Ask the Coaches on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. If you have a leadership question or would like to reach out to one of our coaches, please email us at info@unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us today. Tune in next time to find the keys to unlocking your best leadership.